Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Jumpstart. My name's Jason Meyer, and we're here to help with artistic development. So, let's see. Good morning, Susan. Good to see you here. So the program today, let's do a little rundown quickly. We're going to start with a little drawing from We're going to start with a drawing from Leah, and we're going to go on to a painting from Tanya, and both of those are of J. Then we've got Claudia and Shakti lined up with E, and we're going to finish the show off with a little talk. Susan did some transparency studies, and so we'll have a look at those at the end of the show. All right, so it's going to be a busy morning. I'm going to try to get us all out of here in an hour or just under. So what do you say we just head right over to the iPad and see what we can get into this morning. There we go. All right, so Leah wasn't very happy with the drawing, and so I want to doubly commend her for one, for doing it, and two, for sending in something she's unhappy with. Why is that a good thing? Because now you and I can have a conversation to where we can think, well, what about next? Well, how can we might change this? Right? So where you're lost and unhappy, that's where I get to earn my money. So thanks for getting this into us. Tanya's here. Good morning, Tanya. Good to see you. Good to see you. You're going to be up next. You're going to be up next after this. So before the show, what we've got going here is you've got your dark, like under the hat and the mask, really well, and on the collar. You got some really good stuff happening here. Okay? So what I'm going to do today might sound a little bit aggravating to you, because I'm not going to talk about correcting the drawing. Right? What I'm going to talk about is value patterns. Right? Because the way I teach is we get a hold of those value patterns first, and then from there we learn how to manipulate those into correct drawings. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So that's right. Go, Leah, go. Good morning, Shakti. Good morning, Claudia. So if you guys came in late, the order this morning is going to be a drawing from Leah, a painting from Tanya. Both of those are of J. And then we'll do look at two paintings of E, of Claudia and Shakti, and we're going to end with a little transparency study of Susan. What am I looking for here? I'm looking for a little reference for you guys. There we go. See if that doesn't make this a little bit easier. Okay, so what we want to do, and this is difficult because I'm asking you to put down tones that you don't necessarily see. Okay, so what we want to do, the idea here, is we want to simplify this down into a few simple values. All right, and so our first or our number 4, my pencil's a little bit big, I can't get it any smaller. Our number 4 value is going to be our dark. Right? We might have a 4 and 5 here, meaning we might have a black and a shadow that are really close, but let's consider those as one value for right now. Right? It's very easy to add stuff. It's much more difficult to simplify. So start with the difficult of simplifying it all down to 4 values, period, the whole thing. Then we can get more into that. All right, so number 4 value we're going to have as dark. Probably not a better way to do this, right over here. So let's say dark, and that's our 4. And then we need something lighter than that, but still relatively dark, right? A little elbow room. How about that? So what if we called that number 3? Let me find something lighter than that, but not white. There we go. So we'll call that number 2. And then we're going to need a number 1 here. See if this even shows up. So that's number 1. Okay, so we can see number 1 is lighter than number 4, it's lighter than number 3, and it's lighter than number 2. Okay, and that's how we define a number 1 value, is it's the lightest of those 4. A number 2 value is our light, and it's going to be lighter than our number 3 and our number 4, and darker than our number 1. Our number, I know this may sound elementary, and I'm not talking down to anybody, but we want to get this because with this very simple pattern setup, we can go in very deeply into some subjects. And that's what we want to go, because that's how you're going to understand. And so number 3, you guessed it, is lighter than number 4, darker than number 2, and darker than number 1. And what is number 4? What's its big claim to fame? Well, the number 4 value is just darker than number 3, darker. It's darker than everything. Okay, so that's how I want to compose this picture. And so the first thing is I want to make sure I have 4 distinct values. And then starting with my dark, right? If our light is coming this way, and we had a cylinder, then this whole side of the cylinder, with the exception to the very top, is going to be in shadow. Okay, so we could simplify this whole thing into a cylinder. And then that would tell us that this side is in shadow. And that's exactly what we're going to do first up. Is we're going to establish the shadow on this side. So the side of the hat will have a shadow, right? The bottom of the hat will be in shadow. It'll cast a shadow. Again, the drawing is going to be a little off because my pen won't get any smaller. Okay, so I'm not even going to be able to, you'll have some shadow over here. Again, that's not great, but that side underneath, that'll cast a shadow down here. Side of the neck. Then there's a little piece of the collar. Again, my pencil's just too big, but right behind the neck, and that's going to help pop the neck from the background. Okay, and then, let's see, we're going to have all of this shadowed. This will cast a shadow, and then all of that will be in shadow. Okay, and what that does, if you'll get that, is it's going to give solidity to your painting. Okay, so we want a dark value all connected, running throughout this side of the body. And then for our number 3 value, we want that lighter than number 4, right? And I call this background. I've called it air. I'm blanking right now at what I started calling it this time. Anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. But it's the value in between your number 2 and your number 4. And we're usually going to leave this to be more of a gray, right? Gray or neutral. And it's gray or neutral. This doesn't apply to you yet, Leah. I'm just talking for people in color. Gray or neutral, meaning grayer or more neutral, right, than the stuff up front. Because if it's grayer, more neutral, and in that middle value, that's going to cause it to feel like it recedes. Okay. And then let's come up with our number 2 value. And again, my drawing's going to be off just because I can't get my pencil small enough on this picked photo. You know, the side of the nose here, that little bit of cheek. That neck. Okay, so that's the face in light. Then what we could do is, if that's the face in light, could we go darker, darker than the background, but lighter than the shadow? So see, even though that's lighter than the shadow, it still hangs with those darks. Does that make sense? It groups itself with those darks. And then maybe for the shirt, what I might do, somebody forgot to layer up here. Who's in charge of the layers? Oof, gotta fire that guy. All right, so the question is, are we darker than the background? Yep. And then the other question is, are we lighter than our shadow? Yep. Okay, well then we're in good shape. So now with the shirt, right, and if this is color too, that color will bring some power to it. So, and this is a little awkward, especially at the beginning. We don't want to think necessarily in terms of line. We want to try to see if we can't manufacture, create flat tones with our instruments. You know, with whatever we're using, pencil. We call these charcoal because the charcoal much easier to get it to act like oil paint, and that's one of the reasons that we use charcoal. And it's well suited for these even tones. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. You're doing great. So, like, particularly for you, what I would do on my next step is come in and just see if you can even the background out, right? And what I mean by that is if we get this really large, you can almost see it looks striped there, right? It goes dark, light, dark, because there's just little holes in the thing. Whereas that is what I'm going to call even. Okay, so with these tones, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is manage to get even tones. Okay, after you can get even tones, we're going to start moving those tones a little bit, or another way of saying that is gradating those tones. But the first step, the first skill to get with this material is to separate it into those 4 distinct values and tones, right? So that's the physical skill to get. Now the mental skill, which can be trickies at first, is how do you simplify all of those values and everything into 4 simple tones. Okay? And so this is my suggestion right here. So the shirt and the hat, even though they're slightly lighter than my dark, they group with the dark, right? In that they're darker than that background. And then my number 2 is lighter than my background. So you see that background will fall in the middle there. And then the last thing we'll do is our highlight's going to be the icing on the cake. And sorry, I'm still a little small here. It wants a new layer for that. All right, we can get you a new layer. Can you see that? And with that highlight, what I want with highlights, can you see that highlight's weak? Meaning it doesn't jump off of there. It doesn't jump off of there. So, you know, I'm going to have to fire that. I'm going to have to let that highlight go, you know, say, you know, you're going to be better suited in some other circumstance. But in this circumstance right here, boom. Now, again, the drawing's off. But do you see how you can kind of clearly see that? So we want those clarity in between the tones. Okay, so there's not an exact value I'm looking for, but what I am looking for is a relationship between your dark, your number 4, your gray, number 3, your light, number 2, and your highlight, number 1. Okay? So I hope that makes sense, Leah. I think you're a good job. All right, let's see what we got here. So, yeah, great job, Leah. Again, don't be overwhelmed feeling you have to do everything I did. You know, if you only have a certain amount of time or stuff, the next step would be taking any one of those parts and just trying to even that tone out. And what I'm going to ask of you is to give me at least 2 even tones of different values, right? And that's going to be a little bit of a stretch for you. You know, not even getting an even tone, that's a skill that takes some time and practice. You can definitely learn it. Anybody can learn it. We're not born with that. And then making sure you got another even tone that's different from that. Okay, and that's something you don't have to sit down for long periods of time to do. You know, 2 or 3 minutes here, 5 minutes there, you can sit down. Hey, can I get this tone even? All right, so I'm going to finish up with Leah with one more thing I'd like to say. And I know a lot of you have heard this before. You heard it all before. But let's talk about it again. Let's talk about it again. So what I'm asking you to do, and it doesn't matter if it's what it is, but let's just say you've got that. Say you've got that. You don't even have to do a drawing. Just, can I make a nice even tone? And pick a, you know, don't pick too small of an area to do, right? Challenge yourself that, okay, let's see, can I? Okay, so now I might come across the other way. I'm just doing my best, and one of the things that helps with this is if we work with our shoulder, not our wrist. So my wrist is not moving. My elbow is stable too, and I go back and forth with my shoulder. And what that's going to do, see, that's my shoulder, and if I did this from my wrist, you get all these because your wrist starts turning, it can't do a very long line. But your shoulder, right, from your shoulder, you got no trouble going all the way across. Okay. And then maybe even with the same pencil, if you're feeling feisty, even with the same pencil, can you get an even tone that's a different value? And if the first few times you don't do it, don't sweat it, no big deal. But just keep practicing that. I used to go into art class every morning, or every day. Anytime I had art class, it was mornings and nights and all over the place. And I'd always get there early, and I would try to spend at least 10 minutes on a whole sheet of paper just trying to get those even tones. So one more time, before and after. Okay, so we do it like this so we can have that visual impact. All right, great job. All right, guys, that was a little bit long in lecture. We're going to see if we can't move a little bit here. Tanya, great job. Great job here. So what I want to talk to you a little bit more about what I see, because what I'm hoping to teach you for your own artistic development, and so you can walk on your own feet too, not only what to do next, but how to read this. so you can start seeing what to do next without me. All right, so what I'd like to do is I kind of want to see, let's see, all right, that seems definitely lighter than that, but why doesn't it feel lighter than that? And that, but again, why doesn't it feel lighter than that? Does anybody know? Does anybody know? Yeah, nice impact, huh? So she's got good colors. Boom, boom, boom. So, this is a little tricky. This is a little tricky because you're quote unquote doing everything right, aren't you? But we don't quite have the focus we want. This piece and this piece aren't giving way enough for us to have no choice but to know what's going on with that kid's head. Okay, so how might we do that? How might we do that? Well, one principle of paint is that the flatter it is, the stronger it carries. So even though we need a red pen, even though this is technically lighter, look at the size, right? If we just squared that off, could we say that, it's not even that large. It's maybe like that versus the size of the blue sky and even the size. And it's not sky, it's the flat blue, right? And this is the flat pink, peach, whatever we're going to call that cool red. Okay, so how can we take a little bit of that power out of that, right? Because those are good, strong colors. Could those colors work? So let's talk about how we might decrease the impact. Let's just say from here on the shirt, how could we let it get weaker and weaker and weaker as it moved down? Okay. So, Tanya, I don't want you to think I'm beating up on you because I know you're new. You've done great. You've done great. But what I'm doing here is I want you to understand how paint works. And what I want to do is let's forget about everything else and let's focus right here. And see, this is even peaking a little bit here. So it's bringing us down here very hard. And I'd like us to kind of stay up there. So what we have to notice is the difference between this and this, what's around it. And if we want this down here to make less impact than that up there, what we want is we want a greater difference between this and this here, and much less difference between this and this down here. Does that make sense? So if difference was a measure, and if the shirt and the background at his shoulder have this much visual impact, then down in this corner, let's see if we can have that background and shirt have like that much visual impact. And what if we tried to keep this very simple? So what if we just took a little bit of this color right here, and as this pink came down, what if we let it get a little bit closer like that into that background? And a little bit more down here. And a little bit less and less. Do you see how that one simple trick really helped? But, what if we went I want to get the same value or a similar value. What if we went in the same did the same thing in the background? But I'm not going to do it at the top. I'm just going to do it down here. Let me do a little more down here. And a little less right there. Okay, and I can take my blender and rub that in. And maybe that's too subtle for you to see. But the more and more I do that, then we've got that. And then the final notch I could do is a highlight. Right? I could do maybe a little highlight on maybe a little highlight there. That was a highlight kind of running down like that. So now we're getting more there. So what about that blue sky? Well, what if we did that same thing? What if we brought it closer to this? So what I'm doing is I'm killing the flatness and I'm gradating this blue. I'm going to go do that again. Darker at the top and less as I come down. There we go. And again, I want to try to get this to a flat tone or flattish. Right? I just don't want a lot of noise up there. All right. So do you see how that's happening? So what you've done is I want you to kind of draw, well, what this will do. It's funny, I just assume everybody can see it, but you guys are here because we don't quite see it yet. So what this does is we're drawing the eye into the most areas. Okay, so that's the technique. And just give that a try. Give that a try, and then on your own, I want you to think about it. How could you make that a little less up here? How could you make that a little less over here so that we're, again, even drawn to the background here more than here or anywhere else? Right? And then can we get to where we're drawn to the sky? I don't know, maybe here? Or, and you have to make these decisions. Maybe you want that sky most to be here so that it can go along with your silhouette of the city. And now that we're looking at it, what I would do is, right, we want to keep this pretty even. And then can we just, just a breath lighter. Right, even tie this dark in with that shadow. And I think that's going to help quite a bit there. Anyway, that's a few things you can do, and we'll see what happens. Great. All right, some good encouragement. Tanya, I hope you're seeing all that. Very good. Very cool. All right, cool. So you see the technique. Give it a try. If you don't get it the first time, that's okay, because there is a sense of this materials you've got to get to. So even intellectually, after you know what you got to do, it may take a little time and practice to be able to do it, okay? Give it a try. That's all I want. Give it a try. Let me see how it goes. All right, I know she may be out of here. She had to get out of here early. Thanks, Tanya, so much. Okay. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? All right. It leaves us with Claudia. Now, Claudia is not into portraits at all and wasn't doing this. And one of the things I'm uh, say is if you really hate the subject matter we're doing, I get it. If you hate the subject matter, it's kind of hard to paint. You got to force yourself a little bit. But like Claudia's more experienced, she's not into portraits. That's all we're doing. And so the idea here was, how can we develop? Can we develop form on that dark? Okay. And you basically have it. But what I want to point out is some of this stuff is very sensitive. Meaning, and I know this was a quick study, but even these little edges right there, right, can be enough to kill the form. So what we need, and this is what she's studying, so this is what I'm going to be talking about, is, okay, so if we cut under, give us a definite, that's not definite dark. Where'd you get that dark at? The playground? Where'd you get that dark at, Jason? The playground? Come on. Come on, this is a professional show. Get a real dark in there. Oh, who's this teacher? He's tough. He's tough. Okay, so if we get, let's say this is the dark. There we go. Right? Because I want that nice solid dark, and you're going to see why it has to be so solid here in a minute. So anything in shadow here, we want that even tone of dark. And then we okay if we get right to the heart of the matter here? You guys okay if we get right to the heart of the matter? So what it is we want to put slight change there and see it. Okay, the best way to see change is for it to be surrounded by evenness. So even though I want the background to gradiate, right around where I'm going to show this subtle form, I'm going to take that background and make it a little bit more even. Because if what that does is, with this being even and this black being even, then look where the only change happens between those two. So your eye's going to register that. But if everything's kind of changing, it doesn't quite pick up so well. So much of painting, now this is higher level, guys. This is after you've got those basic patterns, right? We're talking at a higher level. Is we've got to notice all the ways in which paint can get noticed. Right? Last night on Masterworks, we saw what looked to be some very blue water. But it turned out a lot of that blueness came when we investigated it because it was surrounded by worms. So that would be one way you could notice this blue, or that blue, make it noticeable or impactful. Right? If I took that same blue and I went lighter grayer here and darker, richer here, blue, that blue in the, it doesn't have the same impact because blue on blue is weaker. Okay? So I'm going to leave that there because I think that's a good bite size that Claudia can use. And just play with that. Play with that idea of, again, we're not going to keep all of this even because it needs to gradiate. But when we're in this section of the painting, we want you right here. But we want it to be a little quieter. So again, if we even this side out and we even that side out and then let a little change happen in the middle, you'll get a little more for your money there. All right? So good job. And you know, for a study, Claudia, this is what I love to see your guys' studies. Because look how quickly she got it all right. A lot of times when you're not thinking about it, you get it right. Where are we going? We're going here. And look at that silhouette over there. And there's some weight here. We just need a little bit more. So bang, you got that right. Then if this was a real painting, we'd want to come in and clean up a little bit of that face and stuff and give a little more there. All right, but I know what you're up to, so I'm not going to push you on that. But it's amazing at how quickly, even with incorrect drawing per se, right, you can get to something with a real solid impact. Okay, Claudia, your stuff is looking really, really good. Let me push you on one more thing. Well, again, this is the photo. I have a feeling your painting doesn't look like this. So go off your painting. This background is still feeling a bit cool to me. Just slightly too cool. Right? So maybe even on the edges, you don't have to, out here, see if you can't get darker and warmer a bit. Because I feel like this is a nice vagueness from, say, this, but I don't want to end with this vagueness. I need a little more solidity, not solidity, but darkness. A little bit of a focusing down, right? And we're going to get that focusing down by kind of closing in. This isn't the right color, but closing in like that. So I want you guys to see this, everybody to see this, and then we're going to be moving on. The more I close in on him, the more intense this painting gets. Let me go ahead. We're going to do this. Let's make this, let's do it right. So as I make this dark bigger, which makes my light smaller, watch what happens to the intensity of the painting. Now you don't need every painting as intense as like a Broadway show or something. Right, now that's a little rough and hard edged, but I think that's more intense than that. Okay? There's reason for both. There's reason for both. I'm just showing you this so you can see how you have control of it. Right? How she's got it here, it's a little more open and airy. Okay, so we can still take that and still just darken a little bit of this. darken a little bit of that. Right? See, even a little bit. What if we just get them off the edges? What if we just get them off the edges? And then if we're real gentle with our soft edges, so now what happens is you feel held in, right? You don't want to try to escape to other places. And that's the intensity. That's the intensity. Okay, Claudia, good job. Good job. Thank you. Keep pushing. Yeah, yep. Give it a try. Give it a try. Great job. All right, great job. Good. Ah, yeah. Yeah, I like the coolness you have in there. For me, and again, your painting may be off. I mean, this may not be, the photo may be different than your painting, so look at your painting. For me, if I don't walk off a little bit more at the edge, it just kind of feels too willy-nilly to me. Now, you may get a different feeling for it, right? Your feeling is your feeling, and I want you to go, from that. But I want you to know how you can control that. Well, that does feel a little much. Or, man, there's just no intensity at this at all. How do I get... Because the hard part's always the measure. How much? How much? Okay, so this is interesting. So this is what's fun. So he was so dark, and she's trying to lighten that up. Okay, so yeah, and there's different ways to do that, but have an intention and go for it. Okay, so I think you got it, because he does look a little mysterious, even mischievous, right? In the light and all the dark. So notice how just the lighter background can change like the whole feeling of the painting. So that stuff matters deeply. Great job. Great job. I agree. Good. Yeah, you're doing awesome. You guys are doing awesome. Woo, where did we go? All right, there we go. Okay, so let's move on. Keep this show moving. So Miss Shakti. So this is great. I'm just having a look here. All right, I think you're really, really strong. Now, in the photograph here, things are feeling really good. There's two parts, and I think you may have even mentioned this. There's two parts here and that hat feel a little stiff in places, right? That little plastic. Okay, do you remember what we said? I don't remember when we talked about it, but we talked about how to take care of that. Yeah, big impact, Shakti, for sure. A big impact, right? So now what we're doing is we're just talking about getting it to be a little more natural. Again, I have a feeling from looking at this that it's a little closer to what I'm about to tell you than the photograph appears. But it's good for all of us to see it. The more we see it, the more we see it. Well, it's the non-color we're missing. And you may have it. It even seems like it's in there a little bit. But I just don't feel it quite enough. So what we want to do is let's think about our skin tone. And let's get a little darker, richer skin tone here. Let's try this. Yeah, you're getting there beautifully. I couldn't agree more. Right? It's so hard to really see our own progress. I mean, I think it is for everybody. So it's nice to have, other people's eyes on this. Other people's eyes. So what are we doing? See, I was trying to find something a little bit. Does that feel way too dark to you? I don't think it is. And again, I don't think Shakti's this far off. I don't think that, I think there's a little more color there. But let's just have a look. So what if we went just a little more color here? If we get this nice and flat. So, now this is very hard, guys. Again, I don't know what size this is, but this is too small. Where are those hard edges in the eye? Not the glasses, but in the eye. You see how that's got the most impact there? Right? I think we'd be better served if the most impact was right around that black right there and that white. And that we played this stuff down to allow that eye to win. Oops, I'm not going to be able to get small enough again. Dang it. Okay, you see how we're getting more inside that eye? So even on those small portions, right? And again, I'm pushing Shakti because she's doing so good. Think about focus. Okay, think about focus. And here, I would get their focus right there. So what that means is this right here is going to be smaller. And I'm going to lessen those edges just a little bit. Okay. And then the same happens for up here. I'm going to get that down to whatever it needs to be. All right. Let that highlight be on the glass. But let's make sure that right there is the hard edge, and then our highlight right there. Right? Let's have them settle the matter, because look at what we have then. We'll have black, give us a clean highlight on top of the glasses. Right? You can have a small highlight there, a hard edge right there where the black hits the color of the eyes. And then you could even, at the right value, have some red on the inside of the eye there. Why? Because that's impact. Red, white highlight, black. That is a ton right there. Right? That's a ton. We're going do 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 do. Like that's like machine gun fire. And that's what you want, machine gun fire of change. And that's what you want for focus. There we go. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to be a little rough here, but that's what I want you to do inside the eye. But I want to talk about the non-color here. So one thing happens that as I go a little bit darker, then what happens? Well, one side doesn't go into shadow. It goes into air. So the side of his head there is going to go a little bit gray. And then as we turn into shadow, it could go a little bit gray too. Right, it's small. I'm going to probably mess this up, but right here, to soften that edge, we go a little gray. Now this is going to do a couple of things. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to unify it with the background immediately. Okay, the second thing it's going to do, it's going to start to take away that plastic feel. Okay, then what we can do, let's come over here and let's build towards our highlight. So we got a little lighter there. Maybe the side of the nose is a bit lighter. So you see I'm introducing these little things, and maybe let's take another step towards the highlight. On the head before we get to the highlight. Okay, so as you develop the roundness and develop all that right there, that'll come to life and quit looking kind of plastic, right? That monochrome. Now you did write that monochrome, you know, as you're setting in your big pieces, get it up there. But then know that we have to develop it. And you and I talked a little bit about painting's nothing but a balance between you've got to have the division, but everything needs to move, right? So we start these divisions, and when we put them, it's almost like putting up concrete, 12-foot concrete walls around properties and stuff. Like, ugh, that looks horrible. Why are we doing this, Jason? Why are we doing this? Well, you're learning patterns. You're learning what patterns do what, and then you're also learning how to manipulate those patterns for effective movement. Okay? So the division is where the impact comes from. But that 3-dimension in the movement comes from that softness, that gradating, right? That in and out. So with that same idea of the in and out, right? So instead of going just gray or orange up here, what if we let some of that green start to creep in a little bit? This turns to shadow, and then I would get at least a little bit. Oh, you have it up here. Right, a shadow off the background up there. So maybe it's just a... Did that work? You know, quiet. But I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's coming to life for you. All right. So good job. Your balance is good. I don't like the background this light this high. And I don't like it like that because we talked yesterday, Shakti and I, about this. Right? I think this is just pulling us a little far over. Let's keep them more into the center of this form rather than so much on the edge. Okay? And the other thing we don't want to do is we don't want to highlight this thing twice. Okay, there's going to be a single highlight because the highlight is the reflection. So on everything, the highlight's going to hit right there, right at that angle where things happen. So you want to watch that. The only time you're going to get multiple highlights is if you have more than one light source. And if you're doing that, then all different rules apply. Okay? And I don't think the results are as effective. But we talked about coming down here. And I think this is enough if we get rid of this. Okay, so what you did, and I know we talked about leaving some of that open, but now that at this point, I feel like you probably need to close a little bit of this down, right? Just so we really get here. Okay. All right, well, that was fast and furious. I hope you followed that. It's probably too fast and furious, but sometimes it flows like that. Sometimes it flows. All right, let's see what we got here. It's an 8x8. Yeah, so that 8x8, Shakti says this is an 8x8. This is probably too small for some of that eye work. So, but we still need that machine gun. Meaning if this is an 8x8, it's going to be hard to do black, highlight, focus in right down here with the highlight, with color, with hard edge, with red in there, with highlight, with black, with light. So we can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 here because it's too small. But we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then make sure anywhere else never gets to 4. Maybe up here there's like 2. Maybe over here there's like 1 3/4. Maybe this is 0.75 here. Meaning 4 is the most. So the most changes, the most impact, the most. Sometimes that's 72. Sometimes that's 15. Sometimes most is 3 to 5. As long as most is most, it's okay. Meaning is if you've got 75 there, well, you know how you could ruin that painting? If that 4 was 75 instead of 4, well, if you put 77 out here, you've ruined that painting. Okay, well, it's not 77, it's 32. Well, if you put 40 out here, you've ruined that painting. Whatever you put out there has to be less. So if we put 4 here, we just have to make sure that everything else, all through this entire canvas, is less than that. Okay? And with that, you'll be flying the coop in no time. I'm already getting sad seeing you guys go. Get your galleries, be international art heroes. Okay. Ah, good. So you could see when we introduced that green, yeah, because it's a little clumsy here because I'm doing it so fast, but that's what I want you, oh, that's kind of like that exhale. Good. All right, Shakti had to go to work, so thanks, Shakti. Great job. All right, we're getting in towards an hour, but we've got one more to get to before we go. And that's our little bonus transparency here. All right, let me slow down just a minute to get a little drink. Okay, so we went into some of this yesterday, and what we're talking about here is we're talking about the light coming in this way, and for transparency, right, for what we're used to is there's light and there's shadow, and the light side is light and the shadow side is dark. Well, for transparency, basically all transparency is the light side is now darker and the shadow side is now lighter. The reason being is there's a highlight where the highlight hits opaque, right? The highlight, it hits and bounces off. That's like a mirror. But everywhere else where it hits, opaqueness bounces off. The light does not travel through the object. But on translucence or transparency, the light hits, and on the highlight it hits and bounces off. But then when it hits everywhere else, it goes through. And so you see that light show up over here. Okay, so that's the principles on what we're going to be talking about today, or on this setup here. So this is our dark, but if this is a clear glass, I think we're too dark here. I think that's probably even too dark. Right? What happens is glass is these things get closer together. Now right here is going to be the darkest. Why is that? Because let's think about what's actually happening from here to here. So when we're looking through this spot, not only are we seeing through this panel of glass, but we're also seeing through that back panel of glass. And right here, that glass is as flat to us as it's ever going to get. So right here, it's like we're seeing through two panels of glasses. Right here, we're seeing through one panel of glass. Now, as this glass turns sideways, we're no longer like looking through the window like that or a piece of glass like that, but this glass has been turned to we're looking from the side, and now instead of this thin glass, we're looking through all of that glass because over here it's more stacked up. So that's why this is going to be a little bit darker right here on the edge. And it would be a little bit darker on this edge too, because we're seeing through all that glass. Then this is, if this is the background, if this is the cleanest right here, I'm going to try to put background right through that. And then as we come down to those double panes of glass, I'm just going to ever so slightly get a little bit darker. Okay. And so that should be relatively close to the background. Right, to where we can just go in and out of that background. Again, so that we can see these subtle changes, let's go ahead and take all these changes out of the background. Right? Part of doing glass is making sure that the scene is quiet enough so that we can see and register these changes. Okay. So let's just take everything out except that. Okay, and then let's go back to our dark. And the same thing's happening down here, but that stem is less. Right? There's not as much glass, so it's not going to be quite as dark on the dark. Do you see? It's just a little bit darker. Just a little bit darker. Oh, why did I do that? There we go. And the same like for the shadow. So the top of that glass would be getting some light. So that dark would be on that bottom corner. And then I might make this the same as the background. We would have a highlight. Let's see, let me make sure. Yeah, okay. So a highlight will be here. Again, I'm getting a little bit big just because my pencil won't go smaller. Right there, right? Because that highlight hits and bounces off. And then on a bottom back here, you know, as that turns around, directly across from that highlight, you might have just a little bit, but it's not going to be brighter, will it? Again, you don't have to put in everything. And then you've got it right. It's hard. It's a little bit loud. But that's generally right there. Right? I would probably make it a little quieter. And then what's really getting hit with light, well, let's do our highlights first. So you got it right up here. That's where that's going to be. Generally, again, straight across. You'll pick up a little thing there as well. And then we're going to have the glass and light. Now, so let's go to our background again. And what I want to do now is just go slightly lighter than my background. Okay. This here we're seeing close to, wait a minute. Yes. Yeah, okay, so this isn't getting light over there. Okay. So there's the light that we're getting caught with there. And then what happens here? Well, here we're actually seeing through to this. So how are we going to do that? Well, we just got to show one more pane of glass in front of it. Okay. And then over here, okay. So hopefully that feels a little more transparent to you. Again, with it be tricky. The one thing that I'm not totally stoked about is the light on that stem. A lot of times we're not going to trace this all the way up and down, but there may be a spot to where it hits, and then, you know, something a little bit more like that, just to take some of that weight off of it. And occasionally, if that was getting hit, then, you know, some of this might be getting a little light too as it goes down there. And then, of course, that would show through a little bit. Now, it doesn't look right if you've got all these hard edges. What if we soften all these edges down without messing up our value patterns? Okay, so something a little bit like that. So I hope that helps. So you're on the right track there. Be very conservative with your highlights. Be very conservative with your highlights. This is a little tricky, you know, unless the light's kind of coming down like that, I don't know that we're going to get that. Right? If it's, and it can't, we can't have a highlight here and a highlight there. Right? So on this, and I understand we're trying to make this scene, but right, I see a highlight there, I see a highlight there, and I see a highlight there. Right? One here, and then one there. Don't make these equal. Make one more and one less. And then instead of that, we might get a little bit of light running down there because that's getting the most light. Okay? And then for this top plane, I want you to see this as a top plane of glass, right? Versus the side of the glass. I hope that makes sense, that you're going to see more when you're looking through more glass, so it's going to be a little bit darker. All right, everybody. Well, let's see. Seems like I ran over again. So we'll just see how that goes. All right, Susan. I know glass is difficult, so if we'll revisit it again. You know, you guys just never do anything easy. Not only did you pick glass, which is really hard, but this is a hard shape to, oh, how am I going to capture, right, to kind of figure out as well. So, yeah, you'll get there, you'll get there. But you are seeing the good. The main thing is that you see it, right? For me, once I saw it, it was done. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't take 2 or 3 years before I was able to do it. But when I see it, what that meant was that I recognized when I didn't get it. And so I knew not to stop. Okay, and sometimes for a while, that's the most you can do. So, all right, everybody. I think we all should go get into the studio, get our work done. This has been wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for turning in the work and doing so much of it. I appreciate it. Let's see if we're going to be able to end here. All right, so we'll be back tonight with Sketch Club, 7 o'clock on Facebook. We will see you guys then. Bye, everybody. Thank you.